Good afternoon. Welcome to a virtual lecture brought to you by the Nanovic Institute for European Studies from the University of Notre Dame. This is a spring lecture. Today is a true spring day, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this event. My name is Clement Sedmak, and I'm the interim director of the Nanovic Institute. As you all know, the Nanovic Institute's mission is quite simple: to bring Europe to Notre Dame and to bring Notre Dame to Europe. One can bring Europe to Notre Dame by importing ideas, and one can bring Europe to Notre Dame by inviting guests. Today, we will give you the best of two worlds by organizing a lecture delivered by a visitor from Italy who will talk about some of his ideas. I have the honor of introducing Professor Andrea Carteny. He's Associate Professor of History of Eastern Europe, Modern History, and History of International Relations at the Sapienza University of Rome, where he also serves as Director of the Interdepartmental Research Center for Cooperation with Eurasia, the Mediterranean, and Sub-Saharan Africa. Andrea is Notre Dame's visiting Italian Fulbright Scholar for the spring 2021. He's our guest here at the Nanovic Institute in spring 2021, where we host him as part of a collaboration with the Center for Italian Studies and the College of Arts and Letters. It has been such a delight to have Andrea with us. He brings Italian cheerfulness, the depth of the historian, and the sharpness of the political scientist to us. Professor Carteny's research focuses primarily on the concept of national identity, nationalism, and ethnocentrism. These topics have regained importance in the 21st century, paradoxically, because of the global issues like migration, climate change, and the pandemic. Today's lecture draws on these research interests and Professor Andrea's expertise. Andrea will address issues of national identity. He will speak for about 30 to 35 minutes. Afterwards, we have time for Q&A. Please feel free and invited to ask questions and make comments. Use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Professor Carteny's talk is entitled Nation Building and National Minorities, Case Studies from Europe. Andrea, we are so excited to listen to this analysis. Many thanks for being with us. The floor is yours.
So thank you, Clemens. Thank you all for the presentation, for your welcome. I'm very glad to be here as a speaker, as a visiting professor at the Nanovic Institute at the Notre Dame. I'm delighted for being here and to speak about my research and my, I hope, contribution of this very exciting environment. I'm here as in the distinguished chairs of Fulbright within a course of identities in modern Europe. So I wanted to propose to Notre Dame this course because in my studies I approached the issue of national minorities and nationalism in a very sensitive way. I studied Eastern European history with Antonello Biagini, and I focused my research on the Hungarian issue and mostly on the Transylvanian questions. And after that, the PhD was about opposite nationalism in the Carpathian area under the tutoring of Giovanna Motta. So approaching within a modern and cultural historical approach. So what is the main things can I underline and share with you today? I would like to give you some suggestion about the fact that nationalism and national minorities are in the nature of the modernity. And in that sense, we are not talking about something negative or positive, but we have the task to go inside these issues because democracy and stability of our countries, liberal democracy, is in a very in a period where needs to have an approach to that without a judgment, so without bias and prejudices. So nation buildings and national minorities, that is, these are the keywords of my presentation. I want to share some I want to share my presentation in that. I'm sorry that I'm not finding that, but so maybe, okay, I can share this and after lunch, okay. Yes, that is, sorry for my okay. So nation building and national minorities. So nationalism is one of the main political factors also in the today's international context, but I would like to underscore also some meanings about the identity in that sense. Identity is a filter, is a keyword able to give us the sense of solidarity in a community. As Max Weber said, in the socio-economical approach, we can think about that also in a positive way. One of the most important factors in the international context. In that sense, this feeling was framed like the base for the clash of civilization. Sometimes we recall that by Samuel P. Huntington, but of course, that is a confrontation and competition in which today we have new challenges about Asia and in the Pacific area. So the focus of my research is mostly European oriented, so oriented on the European context. In that sense, nationalism is a keyword, is a category through which we can understand also the politics and the ideological competition with other identities and powers. And I can think about religious player, Islamic or Islamic Republic or Islamic states in that sense. So in neutral sense, of course. And in this way, I have to interrupt the sharing of my screen because it's blocked, and I don't know what happened.
Okay, do you want me to share the screen?
No, okay. I'm not right now. Maybe I was able to share that, and it is nope. It's incredible, but my computer is freezed up. So I wanted to share only some images.
So we have, pardon me, Andrea, we have the slides and perhaps Jen.
Yes, if you can send it, because my computer now is working only on the window of the Zoom seminar. So All the rest is frozen. Sorry for that. Yes, thank you. So thanks a lot. So as a reference, of course, after this slide, we have a slide with some scholars that we can share as a suggestion. These scholars are maybe among the most important reference for the studies on nations and nationalism. In that sense, Anthony D. Smith, Benedict Anderson, and Hans Kohn, of course, this last one with this civic and ethnic dialectics. So giving us a real interesting, a real filter to understand what is happening in the modernity with the modern nation. But after the idea of nationalism and the so-called yes, I will tell you. Just to have this approach about the civic or ethnic, so the positive or negative stuff. That is important for us to understand how is this couple of models are merging and mixing up through also the so-called not achieved nation as national minorities are. And in that sense, in the next slide, for example, we have also a reference to this positive or so-called negative nationalism, like so Ernest Renan or Johann Gottfried Herder. In that sense, with Anderson and Smith, we had also different ways to understand how religious community was at the base of the first cultural system, so the humus for nations, or the imagined communities, as he said, and dynastic kingdoms. So that this one is very important because in the sense in which there is self-identification of people within one dynasty, one despot, we have also the so-called civic factor of the territory, as according to Anthony Smith, as a real civic and political factor to forge a nation. So national minorities, also not only the bigger nations, were passing through these factors. And I would like, in the sense, to underscore how the factor like categories and terms like demos and ethnos are not only in the juridical debate field, at the center of the debate of juridical field, but also in the cultural, in a cultural way, among the factors with religion and territories. Of course, with the religion in the eastern part of Europe, we have also the model of the Orthodox millet in the Ottoman Empire, in these legacies, and in the reference of the Russian role in the modern age. But also territory as a geopolitical context where forged this community and nation. We can think about the Eurasia for the Russian Empire legacy through the Soviet Union until the Russian Federation of today, but also in Transylvania, for example. We have this strong reference to the territory where forging, where shaping a nation often and also if plural. And in that case, the next slide, thank you for to put this, we can mention a sample in the Catalan context. It is quite interesting because in the context of Catalonia, we see in this slide the rally for independence during pandemic, and we have some references about the results and outputs in the electoral in the last election, the last electoral process, because Catalonia is a very interesting sample about that. The bigger part of the today conflict in the Catalan society, in the Spanish society, is about, of course, the referendum for the independence, illegal, and consequences, legal consequences on the leaders and the promoters of that. But we can say also that the social fracture and breakdown with the 2017 is still up, is still on the table. So we have, after all, also in the February election, we have quite the same results. So a division between pro-independentist and the anti-independence supporters. So in that case, one of the most important challenge and field of competition was the definition of Catalonia as a nation in the draft and after the statute, so the regional chart, which was approved by the Catalan parliament, by the Spanish parliament, and after amended after years by the Supreme Court, Constitutional Court. So in that sense, Catalunya esas nació, it's an interesting formula because it's focusing on the fact that the territory of Catalonia is able to shape a nation and trying to avoid an ethnic reference for the build of this new nation. Maybe that was the most important amendment that was at the base of the reaction of the Catalan nationalism, and not only from the typical republic and leftist traditional Esquerra Republicana party, but also by the moderate bloc that was very well engaged and committed to the Spanish power for decades. So in this way, we can see how the reference to the territory is referring is concerning about the historical rights of Catalonia and other regions in Spain, and the fact that this factor as an ethnicity factor, so we can say with Smith, that is not only a reference to an ethnic contest, is something more important and wider. So historical rights, talking about the fueros, talking about the tradition of the princedom of Catalonia as autonomous and independent in the past, and also in that sense, all the attempt to a federal reforms in Spain from the second half of 19th century to the Civil War, we can say, in the 30s. So language, of course, language, territory, and Catalanism as an expression of the profound roots of the people. In the next slide, we can say, for example, an expression of the castells, an expression of the sense of the community, the feeling of solidarity, in Weber words, in the Catalonian context. The castells are this human tower. All this success in this performance is given by each effort of the individuals in one ensemble, in one real group, able to support and to distribute all the pressure and the risk of this performance on each individual. At the top of that, they have a young man, a kid, because of course is less heavy. It's lighter, but also there is a reference to this future for the so-called Catalan nation and nationalism. So Catalanism and the transition from a cultural to a political phenomenon in the second half of 19th century was a real revolution in the consciousness of these communities. We have also a flag. This flag is the most ancient flag of Estelada, so with the reference to the fight against the colonial power of Madrid around the Hispano-American War, 1898 in Cuba. So the reference is like about the ideology and the approach of Catalonia colonized or colony of the Castilian. So of course it's a controversial stuff. So I'm only mentioning the feeling of and the meaning of that. And that was used by Catalan volunteers during the First World War. And more than the real engagement of the number of people at that time, that was a real turning point in the commitment, in the engagement of the Catalan intellectuals in the fight for a nation in the 20th century, because Spain was a neutral country, and Catalans wanted to be part of this country and to be part of the so-called fight for freedom of nationalities, of oppressed nationalities and peoples. So that was the ideology. We know very well that in Italy, because Italy was one of the leader countries in the nationalities policy against Austria-Hungary. Of course, that they were not oppressed or not. There was a difference, big differences between the situation of Romanian in Austria-Hungary, Hungary of that time, or Lithuanian under the Tsarist and Russian rule. But what is the most important of all of that? It is the most important things is these factors are the element in the stratification of the nationalism, nation building process. In that sense, can be also mentioned like element able to be part of the ethnicity. So in that sense, territory, symbols, and feeling of solidarity. So Catalonia, it's very cool matter in that sense, and it's a subject quite in the core of the national debate about in Spain and in Europe. But of course, we have also the feeling in this case, the feeling of the distance from the European context, because there is the feeling of to be abandoned, to be not really understood by Brussels in the European Union of today. This is another factor. So in the next slide, we can pass through another case. I like so much this case, and I have the last year and a half published the Transylvanian question after the First World War, publishing some documents about the national issue and the national minority condition in Transylvania. We have a reference to today Romania, also with the election results 2016, in the 2020. You can see, and we know very well, the Hungarian score is quite the same. Maybe is decreasing a little bit because of the demographic trends for Transylvanian population, mostly for the Hungarian population, assimilating or leaving the country for other reason than national reason maybe, but the reality is that. And we have that from centuries. So the focus and the hardest part, the more Hungarian communities are in the center of the Romanian state. That is the reality within this secular land. That is a land quite interesting. We have a region with so strong identity as border communities in Europe, in the Krainas, in the Yugoslavian and Balkan areas, but also in the southern Tyrol. We have the very strong feeling of solidarity and the identity of these communities in the mountain, normally fighters, in this case fighters because defending the borders. And also these characteristics are part maybe of the ethnicity of that. Also in this case, we have to take into account the territory. So the territory is in the Transylvanian context a real nation building factor because of the tradition of the Transylvanian princedom, because of the tradition of the privileges of some estates in this area, also excluding the majority of Romanian for the major part of the history, in the modern history, until the unification with Romania. But in all the case, the territory was able to inspire into the Romanian communities of this territory some particularity, like the tolerance for religions, the autonomous way of life, the expression, some territorial expression of the identities also in the, not only in the Hungarian, in the secular, that these are Hungarian speaker community, and the German, but also in the Romanian communities. So we can see in the next slide also some symbols. So the 15 March, so the national day, celebration day for Hungary, the revolution of the 1848 in Cluj, so in the center of Transylvania, with all the symbols and a flag flags, and hussars and horse rider as a reference of the past, but also want to mention this smaller identity may be stronger inside the context of the majority, of the Hungarianness of Romania, and that is the so-called secular flag. It was interesting to see that in the parliament, Hungarian parliament, as the flag of as a symbol of the identity of the Hungarian parliament during the period of the crisis of flags in Romania. So that was a question from the 2013 about the fact that in this area, in these ethnic blocks, this ethnic bloc outside the official building, with this majority of secular Hungarian people, was exposed this flag, and it was forbidden and regulated by a Romanian law. So in this case, this flag is not a symbol of another country as a flag, but it's a symbol of as a particular identity taking part of another country big national feeling. So this issue is particularly of a particular sensitivity. From during the last debate about that, about the territorial autonomy of this little part of Transylvania, the secular land, from the December 2019 to the January 2020. So there was a draft in discussion in the parliament, but the sensitivity and the opposite nationalism by the Romanian context was very tough against this kind of expression of identity and nationalism. So always nationalism feeds the counter-nationalism. That is, it's a law, perfect law in the social relationships and balance. But we have to take into account the power of this kind of expression, because in the flag of the seculars, this population is channelizing all the past about all liberties guaranteed by laws, guaranteed by kings and juridical contests. So these historical rights, like in the fueros and historical rights of Catalonia, these historical rights are quite always at the base of the real powerness of this phenomena. So not only in Spain or in Hungary, also in other territories of Europe, in the so-called Europe of regions. And of course, this is the real challenge of nation, of the different level of the identity. Nationality or nation, the Transylvanian context as a territory where Hungarian from Romania live, or the Transylvanian context as a real new engine, new context for another identity, part of the big Hungary, but also particularly developed during the centuries as an autonomous land. So in that sense, and also in the secular case, we have the claim to be a people. So in that sense, this feeling of solidarity is very well tied to the differentiation of the religions, And of course, in this context, Catholics, Reformed people, Reformed communities, Lutheran and Unitarians are the religions of this contest. And maybe we can have a last slide where have some suggestion more about the revival and the up and down of the claims and of the expression of national minorities as the vitality of European regions. In the first slide, we have this new website about the Università di Corsica that is written in Corse language. Okay, 5 minutes, and the last point. That is very, very interesting and a very interesting case because, as you will know, in the French context, all the regional identities and expression, also linguistic claim for autonomies are are perceived in Paris like a threat to the stability and to the unity of the Republic. And of course, we have also a kind of discussion on that. Also, the President Macron was spending a visit in Corsica, put in charge one minister for the relationship with this new contest, because so a few years ago they constituted an autonomous territorial contest to put like a region to have a common approach to the two departments of Corsica, of the courts. But that is very important, the fact that the new trend of the political nationalism in Corsica is very well engaged in the claim for old and new rights. And the language is one of this. The ownership and the sense of the ownership of the territory and of the seas around also is one of the core of the national claim. And the approach of the French government is dynamic, democratic, but always keeping this old approach, like the Renan, we can say, as a Renanian approach, but also with a reference to the political nation as only one French nation. So it's interesting for me, for example, for Italian, to give interest to these cases, to visit Corsica within new Erasmus programs, because the young people is now more engaged more than in the past in this new revival. And for that reason also in the last elections of the island, the nationalists, so this new political phenomenon, this new block of autonomists and independentists together were able to gain the election and the principal position in the administration of the island. And we have, as a last reference, the Schützen and this South Tyrolean symbol of Alto Adige in Italian we say, but of course the name and the real traditional name of the population of this area is Southern Tyrol, South Tyrol. So also in this case, maybe one of the model for the solution, the resolution of the political, of the national conflicts and minorities conflicts in Europe, always mentioned, also in the case of Hong Kong or Kosovo or Nagorno-Karabakh, is mentioned like a model of a real useful and functional context of solution. We have also always many issues on the table. First of all, double citizenship. So that was claimed by the right wing of the local parliament and supported by, in the first phase, by the government of the last government of Vienna. But also that was there was an issue able to have a big echo in Italy, and in that sense quite rejected, like a real tough nationalism by a so-called region, rich region, very well with the many benefits by the Italian state, or for example, in the name of locality. So the old name, German and local names put at the same level of the name given by the Italians after the unification of the First World War. So these kind of issues are always referring to something very past, but always at the top, at the core of the so-called modern claim for nations and nationalism in that sense. So maybe these are my suggestions about these issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you so much. We have about 15 minutes for a Q&A. If you have any questions or comments, please put them through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. A few questions have already come in. Andrea, are you ready to answer questions?
Of course. I hope that I was was clear with in the expression of my thoughts. I'm sorry for my rhythm in English and technical.
Oh, don't worry about that. Don't worry about it. Mm-hmm. So the first question is, noting the University di Corsica website, how do we understand the role of new technology and social media in the longer history of nation building in Europe? Is there anything new about these tools? Are there new versions or older methods of identity formation? So that's one question about the new technologies and new media. Do you want to answer right away, or do you want to get 3 questions at the same time?
Maybe if we have more questions, we can collect, and or if there is.
Let me give you 3 questions. So that's okay. The first one, the social media and technology question. A second question is, you said that Catalonia feels misunderstood and abandoned by Brussels. What would be a constructive way forward if the Catalonians have those strong feelings of identity and separation from the rest of Spain?
Okay.
That's the second question. And the third question, can you say something, either in these case studies that you have chosen or others, about the role of histories of violence, histories of civil conflict? So the role of freedom fighters versus terrorists in the process of nation building. So maybe those 3 questions, Andrea.
Okay, thank you. So I start with the first one. That's true. So we are living in this last digital era, and nationalism is adapting. That is important also, that is always a phenomenon able to adapt itself. And in this case, it's a tool. So new tech and social media are employed, of course, by different nationalism. If we think about, for example, the Chinese so-called nationalism and the control of social media and the new technologies, we can figure it out very well how it is important today in the so-called post-imagined communities, we can say with Benedict Anderson. But so if the community was something imagined by in the feeling of the people, now we have another level to express that. That is a real contest of competition. It's, for example, in Twitter and in the social media, young from Corsica are very well organized and well equipped to start up new strategies. We are quite at the beginning of this kind of stuff. But for example, in Catalonia was very important. The social media, when the official channel of communication was against the referendum, for example, of course, all was done by the social contest and digital media. And in that sense, it's very important, and some new elites know that very well, to shape, to educate the new nationalist elite able to handle that in a successful way. Big countries were able to do that also in the first steps, so China or Russia, of course, but I can mention also Taiwan as a Chinese contest, but also another contest where the leading role and the leadership in the new digital tools was very important during these couple decades to keep the independence and a real autonomous and able for the strategic, for an autonomous and national strategic policy. So in that sense, I was impressed by this new wave in Corsica, but of course, also in Transylvania and Romania, these lands are were among the first lands wired at the first revolution in the 90s of internet, and that was a really important contest for the expression of nationalism. In this case, both. So not only the Hungarian one, but also the other one. About the second question
about Catalonia and Brussels and what should we do?
Yeah. So I mentioned that because that was I don't wanna say that by my point of view that is not important. It was the perception of the major part of the Catalan contest. That is a real perception because European Union is in this case is often perceived like a bureaucratic elite, not putting the hand, not always with the clean end in these issues. That is not our stuff. This is not our stuff. That was, for example, some years ago about the frontiers contest between Hungary and Slovakia. There was a clash between hooligans and so on, and after confrontation of people and always. So maybe, I know that is hard, but legitimacy of a power is the legitimacy to hear and to have an approach to the question. So always saying that that is not my stuff. Maybe that is not the best way to legitimate yourself, because if you, but of course that is related to the confederational, supranational juridical context of European Union. We well know that that is quite very, controversial in that sense. But of course, the perception of that, the perception of Catalans are very European before this process, now are European oriented, but not so much, because the feeling to be alone and the loneliness in this political contest for this half, of course, this half of the Catalan society supporting this process, la desconnexió and so on. So in that sense, maybe our at the European top level, we have the need to talk about that. But of course, the national countries, national governments are not so excited to debate that. So in this case, I talk about the European identity and attractivity. For example, in the case of Catalonia, we can also have a different declination of that about Scotland. In that case, reference of Brussels, it's an important factor for a nation building. In the case of, But of course, it is.
Thank you.
That is the context of that, and about violence. It is not. I consider that by a juridical point of view or by a political one, and of course we have the sample of Spain. So in Spain, so the violence, political violence for Catalanism, political Catalanism was quite residual, very few stuff, something very, very old and very little. But we had the ETA, so in the Basque Country, and after all, we saw that the Basque militant of the ETA renounced to this war. Of course, they were in a trouble under the repression of the state, but in all the case, they wanted to try a political way for an independence or the right for a referendum or something like that. But that this Plani Barrecce, we are talking about the first decade of the 21st century, was without an output. And it is interesting that in the Basque Country it's quite frozen, the conflict. And in Catalonia, where the people is well known that they are business oriented, so a war or an independence or a secession was not on the table of businessmen as Catalan people. There, the claim and the stress and the fracture between the center and the periphery about the Catalonia-like nation, about the historical rights and so on, was able to put a start to the independent process. That is maybe something very interesting. So maybe I can figure out that the feeling of the past, the right from the past, is more violent, is more strong, is stronger, is powerful, is more powerful than the gun. So that's in that sense, it's interesting. And also in Corsica. So so this couple, so also in Corsica, there was this very big murder of the prefect in Corsica. It was a real turning point about the repression of the French government and so on. But all this environment was able to have a new start when they abandoned the violence and they recalled the claim for historical rights, for the territorial rights, for the language and communities. So in this case, can be imagined this issue.
Thank you, Andrea. We have probably a last question. How much does the Hungarian minority in Romania respond to the nationalist policies of the Orban regime in Hungary? The Hungarian issue is complicated by the presence of a Hungarian nation state across the border. So how much does the Hungarian minority in Romania respond to Orban's regime?
So this is a good question, because I didn't mention that, maybe because of how can I say, the general context. But of course, the Hungarian government and role, the Orban government and leadership, that is very important. We have to mention that many years ago, with the first good Orban, as we can say, when we say Orban was liberal, it was good, now is illiberal, is bad. But when it was liberal, as people said, it was good, he supported a draft for a law about the status law. So searching for a nationality citizenship level to recognize the Hungarian outside Hungary. And that was not successful process. Rejected, not successful because not supported also by the contest of neighbors. In this case, the last Orban wanted to talk about easier and saying that Hungarian ethnics are Hungarian, I give them citizenship. And in this case, for example, in Transylvania, we have a half number of the million of the new so-called new passport of the Hungarian over the border. And the bigger part of that is in this region of settlers. So we can have that this issue is a real important tool and a real field of competition. In this case, we have also to mention that this is criticized by the Romanian government, but allowed by the Romanian government, because also Romania is doing something like that with Moldova. With the more, with about more than maybe more, we don't know the real number of passport, 1 million passport or something like that, in for a country like Moldova, counting about 3-4 million persons. So, and you know very well that the new party in the parliament, the so-called nationalist new party in the parliament, in the Romanian parliament, AUR, is the Golden Party, the Gold Party, is about first step of this platform is unification with Moldova. So in this case, Orban is calling for this cultural community as of the passport. So the majority, the soul of all the Hungarians inside and outside the country are proved by this mark. So I am Hungarian citizen. In that sense, he played a very clever, smart game, and maybe encountered also the need of these people to be recognized, as they don't have the territorial autonomy. That is the problem. And that was the same debate about the South Tyrol. In South Tyrol, they said, but you have your territorial autonomy. Why now do you want to have also double citizenship? In the same time, as you well know, Clemens, so Austria can allow that for foreigners, but from Austrian family, but not for people, of course, Italian citizens in this time. But that is not only Orban doing that, and after that Orban is of course a reference also for not right wing, right oriented in the politics of Transylvania or other minorities, because he was able to give a new start of this proudness.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you. We are at time. Thank you, Andrea, for your lecture and handling our questions at the end. Thank you for participating, everybody. This has been a virtual event, and we want to thank our tech and communications team for making this possible. Grant Osborne, Mel Webb, Grania McAvoy, and Jen Lektansky. Thank you so much. At the end, stay tuned. The Nanovic Institute will have a busy last week of April with a lecture by Moritz Grafrath, with the Keeley Vatican lecture by Barbara Chatter. We go back to Italy here, the director of the Vatican Museums, and we also screen a film, Lifeboat, on April 29. Thank you so much. Many thanks, good afternoon to all, and goodbye.